So I'm not sure if there's any Alice in Chains fans watching this video, but they announced a big section of merch for their 30th anniversary, and a really cool vinyl box set, which I already have Jar of Flies on vinyl with SAP, so I didn't end up buying anything. There's a t-shirt I want, but that's what I've been listening to this morning, having some coffee, you know. This is my 18th cup this morning, not really, and doing some stuff for Quesadilla. But yeah, I don't know why I started talking about that. I guess I just wanted an excuse to talk about Jar of Flies, which I know it's an EP, but it's like one of my favorite albums ever. Probably in front or behind Animals from Pink Floyd, I'm not exactly sure. But last night I had a chance to revisit Zone of Interest. I saw it at the Chicago International Film Festival, and I had a chance to watch it at a theater sort of near me. I had a chance to show one of my good friends the film, and my wife, which my wife went all the way to Chicago with me, and she didn't get to watch Zone of Interest. So she watched Oppenheimer while I was watching Zone of Interest, which is kind of funny. But yeah, and I got a chance to meet Christian Friedel, the lead actor, not last night, but while I was in Chicago. I hate it when my hair does that. And I figured, why not just do a ranked for Jonathan Glazer? Because right now I am going through Ingmar Bergman's filmography. Slowly but surely, like if you go on my letterbox, you'll see that I've vlogged like 70, almost 70 films this month. That'll never happen again. But a lot of those are Bergman films that I've been watching while I've been at work. And so I've been able to do that. But I figured this would be a lot easier because we're just doing 4 films. Jonathan Glazer only has 4 films. He does not release a film that often, and rightfully so, because he is a very, very precise director. I think if we had to choose another director that might be more of a control freak than David Fincher working today, I would probably say Jonathan Glazer takes the cake. And that's a good thing when I say control freak, just because it seems like they have control of every aspect of their film. Now, Jonathan Glazer, he does do a lot of Steadicam, well, not Steadicam, but like handheld and stuff for Under the Skin, and his stuff might not seem as neat as David Fincher, but believe me, I'm pretty sure there's a reason why. So yeah, just because you see this and that doesn't mean that they're not being precise. It's just there's a reason why. But we're going to talk about it. I have my list right here, and let's not waste any time. I was actually going to do this video with one of my friends, the guy that sings Zone of Interest with me last night, who's also an actor in Quesadilla, but he said he didn't have anything intelligent to say about the film. Fucking idiot. No, I'm just kidding. But coming in at number 4, we have Birth. Now, Birth stars Nicole Kidman and also has Arliss Howard, both 2 actors that worked with Stanley Kubrick. And this is probably the most polarizing work that Jonathan Glazer has done. If you look at its critic scores, if you look at its audience scores, they're not friendly at all. It's in like the 30s, which is completely unnecessary, because I think Birth is one thing that you're going to notice when I talk about Jonathan Glazer's films is his films are all good. Just because this one is at number 4 does not mean it's not good. It just means I have to put something at number 4. I think it's a crime that people do not like this film. Severely underrated. But let's talk about it. So I am going to read the description on Letterboxd. It took Anna 10 years to recover from the death of her husband, Sean, but now she's on the verge of marrying her boyfriend, Joseph, and finally moving on. However, on the night of her engagement party, a young boy named Sean turns up saying he is her dead husband, reincarnated. At first, she ignores the child, but his knowledge of her former husband's life is uncanny, leading her to believe that he might be telling the truth. Birth is one of those films where it presents a very intriguing mystery throughout the film, and then when you start to figure out things, it's not necessarily as impactful as you might think, but it works. There's one scene in particular which I think is something that throws a lot of people for a loop, and I guess I could say rightfully so. And it does have something to do with Nicole Kidman and the young boy. It's a little uncomfortable, but I think it's meant to be uncomfortable. And while I do think that it is a little bit unorthodox, the thing is this is being recorded for potentially millions of people. And I don't think that there were any ill intentions with that scene. I just think that some people they were not prepared for it. But I think that's what throws a lot of people off. But what Birth does is it presents this very, very intriguing mystery from the start. And it very loosely holds that mystery let me try to find a better way to rephrase this. it doesn't necessarily hold the mystery to you the whole entire time. Like, you don't have to grasp on this mystery. You're allowed to just sit there and watch it and be like, okay, well, I'm going to make a decision for myself. Is the kid lying or is he not? You don't really, the whole entire time, it's not like, oh, is he lying? Is he not lying? Because when at least from my point of view, when I watched the film, I sort of came up with an idea of what I actually thought. Whether or not it was right or not, I went through the film believing what I wanted to believe. And I think that takes a lot, because a lot of the times you'll be like, okay, well, is it this? Is it that? Is it this? Is it that? For me, no, I made my own decision and went throughout the whole entire film with that decision. But then whenever you figure out, okay, what actually is going on, and then for a rewatch, it does kind of make for a completely different film. And that's one thing that I've noticed about Jonathan Glazer's films, is his films are very timeless, very timeless. And I know I might have just sounded stupid bringing up my my opinions on Birth, but that's how I feel about it. And if you don't like it, then take a sip of coffee with me. And also, Birth really needs a Blu-ray, actually a 4K. Actually, all of these films need a 4K. Let me get a 4K. Coming in at number 3 is Jonathan Glazer's directorial debut, Sexy Beast, with Ray Winstone. No, not Ray Winstone. Ray Winstone, I believe, and Ben Kingsley, which, if you do not know who Ben Kingsley is, what? Ben Kingsley, anything that I see him in, he kind of reminds me of Harry Dean Stanton, where even if they're in a supporting role, they basically just steal the movie. But Sexy Beast came out in 2000, and it's probably the shortest gap between films. Like, he did Sexy Beast, and then 4 years later he did Under the Skin, or not Under the Skin, Birth, and then like 9 years after that he did Under the Skin, and then like 10 years, 11 years after that, Zone of Interest. So it's sort of the shortest gap. But Sexy Beast, what is Sexy Beast about? Well, this is what Letterboxd has to say. There's a bit of the beast in us all. The idyllic life of retired safecracker Gao is put at the risk when a psychotic gangster from his past arrives at his villa in southern Spain, intent on bringing him out of retirement for one last job. I can't really help but sort of get Soprano vibes when I watch this, especially with Ray Winstone. He's just, I don't know, he just really reminds me of Tony Soprano, and I can't help it. Now, this film is probably the least thought-provoking Jonathan Glazer film, which is okay, and it's really cool because everything that Jonathan Glazer makes is pretty much different, and that's why I like his films. But it's really short. It's 80-something minutes. It's very straightforward, which I think is something that I like, and I think that's the reason why I like it just a little bit more than Birth. Like, when I say, basically, my top 2 Jonathan Glazer films and my bottom 2 Jonathan Glazer films, like, my top 2 are masterpieces, and then 3 and 4 are, really, really, really good films. So I guess you could say 3 and 4 could be interchangeable depending on what day it is, and then my number 1 and 2 could be interchangeable depending on what day it is. But I don't think my 3 and 4 would cross to 1 and 2, if that makes sense. But Sexy Beast is just extraordinary. And there's one scene in particular that really does throw me off. It reminds me a lot of Donnie Darko. If you've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. But Jonathan Glazer is not scared to sort of get into the subconscious of our lead. He's not scared to sort of present something maybe even a little bit supernatural, which I don't think it's supernatural, but you can't help but think it's supernatural when you see that specific scene. He's not scared to just do different things, and I think Sexy Beast is the perfect starting point for Jonathan Glazer, not because it's his first film, but just because it sort of shows you what type of director Jonathan Glazer is. And if I can recommend to you what version of this film to watch, because there's really 2 versions. There's a 185.1 version, and then there's a 239.1 version that's matted. Do not watch the 239.1 version. Watch the 185.1 version or the 16:9 version, just because all of Jonathan Glazer's films seem to sort of be like, this would be the only widescreen film, and I'm not sure if he means for it to be widescreen or not, but yeah, the version that I watched was, I believe it was 185.1 or it was 16:9, I'm not sure, and I think I prefer that because I have seen clips of 239.1. Coming in at number two, here we go. Under the Skin. Under the Skin stars Scarlett Johansson, and it is a very, very experimental work. This is the description. A seductive stranger prowls on the streets of Glasgow in her search of prey, unsuspecting men who fall under her spell. This film is extremely smart, and it's very, very visionary. A lot of the stuff that you're going to see in this film is mainly, there's a lot of visual storytelling in this film, and I like it. But Scarlett Johansson gives a very unsettling and very thought-provoking performance. And Jonathan Glazer does this really cool thing where he has hidden cameras, and he'll record these guys getting in the car. And for some people, this film might be hard to follow, but for me, I enjoyed it. And there's some scenes, especially with the kid by the beach, it's just, some of it's just so heartbreaking. And I would almost consider this to be, and I don't like comparing other directors' works to other films, like, oh, this is somebody's Django, or oh, this is somebody's The Shining, or oh, this is somebody's La Dolce Vita. But this is Jonathan Glazer's 2001, I think. It's so metaphorical. It's just visual storytelling at its peak. I would almost say I enjoy this film more than 2001. I know that's a hot take, but Under the Skin is just absolutely magnificent, to the point to where I do think this is the film that I just have the least to say about, just because you should just watch it for yourself. And this is probably the film that I think a lot of people know Jonathan Glazer for. Like, I don't think a lot of people have seen Birth and Sexy Beast as compared to this one and Zone of Interest. But speaking of Zone of Interest, coming in at number 1 is Zone of Interest. And I feel very comfortable saying that just because I had a chance to have a rewatch. And watching it the first time, I was very kind of iffy because I didn't know if I wanted to put Zone of Interest or Under the Skin at the top. But Under the Skin, I think I enjoy watching Under the Skin more than I do Zone of Interest, but there's no guarantee, there's no denying that Zone of Interest is one of the most important films ever made. The Commandant of Auschwitz, Rudolf Haas, and his wife Hedwig strive to build a dream life for their family in a house and garden next to the camp. This film is one of those rare films where you don't want to watch it again, but you kind of do. Like, it's very interesting because this film sort of has two films in one. Like, you're watching something in front of you, very, very, very visionary stuff, and then behind it all, you have just very extraordinary sound mixing, where you're watching what's going on in this house next to the camp, but you're hearing what's going on outside into the camp. The first time that I watched this film, I was focused on the sounds. And then the second time that I watched it, I was focused on what was going on in front of me. This film just is timeless. It's very, very timeless. It came out during a time, it came out when it was supposed to come out. And I think that's impressive because I'm pretty sure Jonathan Glazer, I think he filmed this back in 2001 and it's just now coming out in 2023, or I guess you could say for some people in 2024. But this is going to be one of those films where I think people are just going to talk about it for years to come. I think it's going to be known as one of the best films of the 2020s, just like Under the Skin was known as one of the best films of the 2010s. And I think that's just kind of the director that Jonathan Glazer is he just releases a film basically once every decade, I guess, besides Sexy Beast and Birth. And it's just going to end up being one of the best. And it's just because he's such a thought-provoking director. And if you've seen any of his shorts or any of his commercials, you'll know that he puts his vision, first, and the research that goes into his films are just magnificent. I mean, he's not scared to spend a long time, with these films, and I think the people that work with him aren't scared to spend time with him as well, because I don't think they care about what people think about their film. I think they know that their film is more important than, God forbid I say, cinema or movies themselves. Like, that's just sort of how Jonathan Glazer is, and that's why I enjoy his stuff very much so. And Zone of Interest is presented in a 16:9, very clean, very digital look, with some infrared shots, for the nighttime. And it's very daring and it's very ballsy. But this is how it would probably look back in the day. Everything is just clean, everything is natural, because I know a lot of films, like if it's set in a time period, they'll try to get stuff from that time period and put it into the film. But then at that point, everything just looks vintage and, you know, like not really accurate. But Jonathan Glazer, it's just, everything about Zone of Interest is just absolutely phenomenal. I could go on about this film all day. I really hope A24 does like a special edition 4K for this, because it needs a 4K. If I'm being completely honest, it's meant for a 4K, guys. It really is. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a thumbs up and maybe subscribe. Let me know what your Jonathan Glazer ranked is down in the description below, or comments below. Also, if you guys want to donate to our Indiegogo for my short film 2, we're almost at 400% over budget. I cannot believe it. Thank you guys so much. If we get to 2,000, that's going to help the cast and crew out so much. Pesadilla is almost done. I actually have a premiere date set up for Pesadilla, so the whole, well, not the whole world, but like, but I'll be able to show it to like almost 300 people for the first time, which is like very nerve-wracking, but at the same time very exciting. And then we'll throw it in festivals. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a thumbs up and maybe subscribe, and I'll see you next time.